like to acknowledge the presence of Pastor Henry. Welcome, everyone. So tonight our conversation is on the educational system in the Caribbean. This conversation is a continuation from our last discussion. And tonight we have two new panelists, one a host and one a panelist. These two panelists have taken non-traditional means of pursuing their careers. We have Jerome and we have Renee. Renee will be our co-host today, and I will allow Renee to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Hi, my name is Renee McCain. Some of you may know me from attending Faith Tabernacle for the majority of my life. I went to school for the most part in Trinidad, and I did my tertiary education in the US. And I'm currently in the sector of health policy and research and government technical assistant. And I'll bring that background to this space as well. And I am currently living in Maryland in the US, so I can also bring a bit of background in terms of the educational system in the US as well.
Great, Jerome.
Hi, good night, everyone. My name is Jerome Ruck. I'm a Barbadian. I attend the school of Simon Jack McPherson Institute of Technology. And a hobby of mine is fishing, drumming at times. And I believe that this topic, it needs to continuously be addressed because it affects so many lives, around the world. So, thank you.
Great. So you see that our new panelists have not taken the traditional route, meaning they haven't stick to the normal maths and English and languages, so they will be contributing tonight. I will allow Kayla and Dominic and Renal to introduce themselves. Starting with Dominic.
Good night, everyone. My name is Dominic Scannabury. I am currently a student at Harrison College in Barbados, and I also represent the country in badminton as well as volleyball. And as Jerome said, this topic, education, is something very crucial to our lives. Everyone should be educated, and I believe they should get the best education that they could. So I'm very excited that we are touching on this topic again.
Good night, everyone. I'm Renelle Francis. I'm from Trinidad. I attend the Faith Tabernacle Church in Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm currently studying information technology and principles of accounts. I believe that the education system has a big part to play in our lives and in guiding us to who we would want to become in the future. So I believe that this is a very important topic.
Hi, good night, everyone. My name is Kayla Ranick. I'm 17 years old and I am from Barbados. I go to Harrison College and I represent Barbados in both swimming and triathlon. Like the other panelists said, education plays a major role in everyone's lives, and this is a topic that needs to be continuously addressed. So I'm excited to be here and discuss this topic with all the other panelists.
All right, great. My name is Chelsea Bess. I am a level 3 electrical and computer engineering student at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. And I'm a product of the system, excited to have this conversation with everyone. So we'd like to encourage you to drop your comments in the chat, any comments, any questions, any emojis. If you have any, comments and questions, you can also raise your hand and we will answer them. So my first question for the panelists, and this is for everyone, what are your views on the educational system? Starting with Renee.
Sure. So in the couple of education systems that I've been in, I think there are a lot of weaknesses and shortfalls with regards to the fact that those systems fail to effectively reach a wide range of people. It's very structured, it's very standardized, it can be very biased, and they focus pretty much on the people who can do well, the people who can get the support at home to further their studies, to focus on their studies actually. And a lot of times they encourage or they prioritize specific subjects and specific pathways of careers. And they kind of either shun those who try to explore the others or just don't give them enough support and resources to really explore what that would look like. I know in my case specifically, when I was finished with CAPE, I was kind of stuck because I had passions for business as well as healthcare. And I went around to a bunch of different schools and there was nothing that kind of meshed those two things together. It was either you want to be a nurse or you want to go in accounting. And I was just like, none of these things really, fully encompass what my passions were. And I think a lot of times, and I think for that time specifically, I felt kind of lost because I didn't want to rush into school and just like become disinterested, but then I didn't want to feel like I was wasting my time. I did eventually take a gap year. So I just worked for a year. And then I eventually, applied for schools abroad. And even there, I must say that I still had to do my own exploration of how to mesh those two things together. Because even there, they especially at the undergrad level, it still is quite separated with those two passions. So I would say yes, it's great. You can definitely do a lot of things, but I would say that the system as it is right now is very structured and it doesn't allow the flexibility to really explore the individual's passions as well as it should.
Right. I completely agree. As everyone can see, the reason we have Renee here, a very successful person already, but it seems as though she had so many challenges going through this same system. So you can see what an asset she is to our conversation tonight. And I will ask Jerome to give his opinion on the educational system.
My opinion on the educational system is that, it needs to be adjusted to modern day society. Due to the fact is that, back in the older days, society had taught us to, go to work, get good grades, and get a good job. But in society today now, it's being hard that, you have the good grades, you have all the things you need to pretty much, get what we're supposed to get. But it's finding it hard to, pretty much make a living out there, although we have the things that the educational system has, taught us and give us for us to be successful. So my views on it is it needs to be changed to adjust to the modern day society of this generation.
Great. And can you give us a background on how you got into the agriculture sector?
Okay, how I got into the agricultural sector. Well, originally, my plan was to study landscaping, at the Polytechnic. And, at the time that, I went to sign up, they were not offering it that year. So, they offered me the agriculture as a, another option. But, due to the fact that I had, experience with family members doing agriculture, since I was young, well, let's say, well, let me see what this can go. So, I took the offer and I ended up falling in love with the agriculture and I never, stopped falling in love with it since.
Great. All right, great. Thank you. How about you, Renelle?
Yeah, so I think that the education system is very structured. There are lots of flaws, and I believe that one of the ways that the education system needs to be tweaked is that there are some students who have certain learning techniques, learning disabilities, and I think that needs to be looked into a little more to give everyone a fair chance at succeeding. There are lots of students that are being left behind, and that shouldn't be the case. Everyone should be able to succeed in the same time frame, so I think that's my view on education system. It's also a system based on academia. So yeah, I think that's my view.
All right. Kayla or Dominic?
The way that I see the educational system, well, and this is for here in Barbados, is that yes, it's structured and the way it's set up is very standardized, and it focuses more on the supposedly brighter students in the academics mainly. And what this does is leaves all the other people that are not so academically inclined, they are left to the wayside. And then when we look at other educational systems in other places, we realize that the teaching system here, what you have to go through to become a teacher here in this system is not as rigorous as it is over there. So sometimes, so one thing that we could look at our system is the teaching. That is one thing that for me is one thing that we could look at, and we could focus on the teachers getting more accreditations and learning more techniques of how to teach, and also learning how to detect certain disabilities in students, because this is one thing that has been said, and as we have discussed, that it's really looked over when certain students have disabilities, and these are the ones that really need a lot of work, but they are just left behind. And I believe that is a flaw that can be fixed.
My view on the education system is, like Raynell and Rennie said, it is very structured, and if you don't gravitate towards the subjects which they cater for, they tend to pay the most attention to, you kind of are left behind or like left on your own trying to figure out, well, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. So what am I supposed to do? Do you just take a subject that, just to pass, just to go through the education system, or do you have to find other alternatives to do what you're passionate about? And then for people who can't afford to per se go and spend the money to find other alternatives or pay the money for that, what happens to them? They tend to get left behind or left finding other ways to make ends meet.
Yeah, I completely agree. I realize we're leaning towards the word structured. So tonight we're going to basically, I would say, depict the word structure, whether it has something to do with our culture, whether it has something to do with the administration or just the teachers in our system. But why is it this way? Our opinion on it and what we would do to change it. I would say I am, like I said, I'm a product of the system, and I'm only a successful product because my parents were on me. My parents had the means to go and figure out what was wrong with me, but that's not fair because at the end of the day, everybody can't do that. So what's going to happen to the ones that are falling back? It's unfair for them. So my next question, and we can start with Jerome, is: do you think the education system is adequately meeting your needs? Does it prepare you to fulfill your dreams and visions? Jerome?
I will have to say no because, personally, when I was back in high school, back in secondary school, me personally I didn't know what I wanted to do. So, I was here and there, I wanted to do this kind of a career or do that kind of a career. And then, and school never really actually helped, to be honest, because, I only found out that, I wanted to do the career of agriculture when it was offered to me rather than I going after it, if that makes sense. So me personally, I believe that yes and no, because sometimes we find our passion within school and sometimes we find it out of school after the things that we go after, sometimes don't always come to play. So that's my opinion on that.
All right. How about you, Kayla?
Pardon me?
I asked, how about Kayla?
Okay, cool.
For me personally, not really. School more so, for my school specifically, they more so look at the sciences and like business and accounts and stuff like that. I personally gravitate more so towards sports. So yes, they do have the inter-school competitions and stuff like that, but there's no real teaching or real I don't know how to say it, real guide when it comes to if you want to do something outside of those specific subjects. So I PE, like one of the subjects I do now, which is gonna help me with what I want to do because I want to do sports admin, only came to the Cape level the last school year. So it's like, what about all the students before me who wanted to do the same sports admin or sports management? They had to take other subjects, you know, just to get through the education system. So it's what I want to do personally, no. But then you do have those students who want to do the same sciences and accounting and business who do get the benefits of the education system.
For me, I would say no as well because I went on the same line as Kayla. Me going back to the school that I chose was because they had physical education, and the thing with it is that there were other bands for certain other subjects that I wanted to do, but I couldn't do those subjects because physical education was in a different band. So one thing that I was so my answer to the question is no, but it was all on the students to go and decide for themselves how to get where they want to get. So even if it is that we go back to this certain school and they give you the information, you know that you will not be able to do certain things, if anything, and you have the means to go and still do that, but then on the side, you could focus on whatever else it is that you would like to pursue.
For me, I don't think that it gets us into what we would want to become. Simple answer is because it does not give us the opportunities that we deserve. You know, some students want to develop more on their skills and talents, the arts and, you know, the hairdressing, the nail techs, those type of things. And I don't believe that the schools give us enough opportunities to venture into to go into those fields, you know.
Mhm.
So all the cosmetology and those type of things, we don't have enough schools that offer those opportunities. I remember when I was going to school, we had to do, in the first 3 years of our school, we had to do up to 14 to 15 subjects, and that was a combination of business and sciences. That was basically the only two fields that we were introduced to. And when we reached the end of the third year, we had an opportunity to go into either one. And sometimes when you choose certain subjects, they tell you that, okay, that class is full. So now you have to be forced to go into something that you don't want to go into. So I think that that is a big part to play in why sometimes we may be left behind because we can't go into the fields that we would want to go into.
I agree. I would say during my primary school to secondary days, the system didn't work for me in terms of where I am today. I don't think that it introduced me to anything that would have made me decide, okay, I want to be an engineer. It was more so people at home and then, you know, family, friends, just being around them. And I would also say the system, in my opinion, in university, even in a degree I do, it exposes us to so much theory, but it still doesn't give us as much practical as we would like. So we would have to go and maybe get an internship because I had an internship last year. And when I realized, you know, how much the things that I've actually learned can be applied to the real world, I was shocked because we always say, you know, the things we learn in school will never help us. But though we might say the theory might not help us, just going through the system and having to mentally prepare for examinations and having to deal with stress and all these things help us, but we don't know how to use it because the system is so structured, you know.
Right.
So
I was going to say stuff on that. The structure that is there in the school system, I believe is actually a good thing because what structure does, it gives you a mindset that it allows you to know what has to be done and in a timely manner, and it sets you up for the workforce.
yeah.
So I believe without a certain structure, you might go into the workforce willy-nilly and you might easily get fired, or you might not even get a job because you don't have that set grounded of, or you have to get to work for this time, you have to get to school for this time. When you get to school, you have to be deported a certain way. And all of this structure carries into the workforce. So I believe the structure in that manner is very important.
Exactly. So maybe if we were introduced and we knew, you know, how these things could benefit us, somehow, you know, we would be a lot better off.
Definitely.
You know?
I would just add on to what Dominic said. I think, yes, we definitely need a structure in terms of having a routine for children, because that's how children progress when they have routine. That's how they advance. I would add though that in addition to the structure, we should also have that openness and that opportunity for critical thinking and for children to have independent thought. Because I feel like going through the system, that's what was stifled the most with me. I feel like when I went to school, it was like, this is how you're supposed to think, this is what you're supposed to do. And it was like, don't speak any dialect, we want you to speak standard English, you know, you can't say tree, you have to say three, and all of these things that kind of just like a lot, that kind of formulate or mold children into these like standardized robotic beings, and then they're not able to kind of think outside of the box. They're not encouraged to be creative, because children are creative regardless of whether you encourage them or not, but that's kind of stifled. So I think we do need to make that balance of, yeah, we have the structure just so that children can, you know, understand rules and those dynamics, but also ensure that children are able to express themselves and explore different avenues, and make sure that that isn't stifled throughout the process. And that's something that kind of just like goes hand in hand. I also want to encourage anyone, if you have any questions or comments to what we have started to say, feel free to leave a comment in the chat, or if you'd like to say something, you can raise your hand as well. Yes, we definitely want your engagement and your input on what we're saying. If there's anything you agree or disagree with, feel free to let us know, and we'll be happy to comment on anything that you respond to.
Right. No comment, no questions. Okay.
In the meantime, while people are still thinking about what to ask, Chelsea, would you like me to just like give a breakdown of like what I've researched?
Yeah.
Sure. So in order to, we talked a lot about problems with the system. Oh, I see that there's a hand raised, so I'll take this question before I go into this. Let's see. I'm not able to see the hand that's raised. Oh, okay. I see Dr. C. Drakes. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, yes. You could just call me Shiaka. Sorry, that's my work. This is my work Zoom. But firstly, I love this conversation. I am absolutely excited about it because yes, the system that we have just doesn't work. Yeah, but then there's the other side. So I'm a product of and entrenched in that system. And one of the questions I have for you guys is, when you think about, okay, the current system isn't really working for a lot of people. There are a lot of things that I might want to do that isn't offered at my school, or the way it's offered at my school is very theoretical and not practical. And I would like to see some change. How do you
stop the lesson and actually talk through that process of, hey, what you said, this would how that person would feel and all of that. Like they prioritized that because they said that once those children had that framework of being empathetic and caring about others, it was easy for them to, learn later on and really have those skills to connect with their peers later on. And so that was one thing. Secondly, they also, and this is specifically with Finland, they reduced the number of hours of teaching. So when you start in elementary, it was only 20 hours per week. And then as you advance a couple of years, they add on a couple hours because they realize that the attention span of children is, they listen, but they don't really listen. That's how they get like agitated and they start running around because they can only focus for that amount of time. And also this part I love the most, and these are things that can be easily implemented. They allow the children to have some agency. So they would be the ones selling stuff in the cafeteria. They will be the ones cleaning the dishes after lunch and all of these things. So children learn they have a part to play. So it's not just like they come to school, they do this, they do that, they push things this way. They realize that there's a responsibility that they have to care for the environment within which they reside. And so that also builds self-esteem and confidence in children as well, to take pride in where they are. And these things resulted in having very low truancy rates. So because they have those social skills and all of things developed early, they weren't dropping out of schools, they were staying in. So all those bullying things that kind of affect people later on, those things aren't really happening because they have already ingrained that at a young age. And they also are the top levels. So I think they're in the top 10 school education systems. And then that kind of just falls into tertiary education as well, where, they ensure that every student has a bit like a salary. So once you work for a couple hours, the government is going to give you money on top of that so that you can focus on your studies. So you only need to work at least 11 hours a week, and they give you money so that you can focus on your studies. And these are just a couple of things that I think may not always require funding, but it's like a mindset change that can really result in a change in how children are taught and how they are encouraged to, explore. And also I think a lot of times we baby children and we think you just have to tell them what to do. But if you allow them to, take a little bit of responsibility here and there, take pride in their work, these are things that even if you can't possibly provide every subject or everything, if you allow them to say, hey, if I'm interested in something, I can look at it because I was already encouraged in school. I was already encouraged to, explore and have critical thinking skills and really push back on what people think are the norm. If I'm already encouraged to do that, then even if I don't see it right in front of me in school or in the curriculum, I'll still be encouraged to explore that. So yes, we definitely do need funding. And yes, funding at times does require more taxation. But if we put those structures in place where everything is at the governmental level is set in stone. And something I forgot to say was all the schools, the funding comes strictly from the government. Schools cannot raise funds. They're not allowed to raise funds. They're not allowed to have boards and all of those things because they want to make sure that every single child has the same opportunities. They're open to the same things. And because of that, there's no concentration of these opportunities here and there, and there's no pockets, but everyone is settled and has the same foundation. And I think that's something we can kind of look at, like, okay, even if things take time, funding, and also thinking, let's first start with ensuring that those opportunities and that mindset is changed, and then yes, those things can follow. I hope I answered. I hope I started answering the question.
I do have, you touched on some wonderful things. You said something there that made me smile, that there's something that needs to be changed, but these are simple things. We just have to change our mindset. But changing a culture is harder than getting money. Much harder.
You're right.
Of a people, an entire people, is much harder than getting money, donated to you. And so it's something to really think about. One of the things I tell my students is I can't prepare you for a job because I don't know what jobs will be available. I don't. I can only teach you how to think, how to reason, but I can't teach you what you will need to know for a job in 5 years because the job you will be doing in 5 years doesn't exist now, right? Like when I was a child, I can date myself, the internet didn't exist. There was no internet, there were no cell phones, right? You couldn't drive and have a conversation on a phone. It didn't mean anything, right? And even the idea of you being a YouTuber and doing makeup and getting money, like if you told your parents, when I grow up, I'm gonna put on makeup in front of a camera and people all over the world gonna see it and pay me money to do that, they'll be like, girl, you crazy. Go and study physics, biology, and chemistry. But so now what you're asking is, I want the school system, which is a product of our culture, and it is a slow moving product. It's not something that, because you have so many people in it, you have people who are trained one way, but the way the world is changing now is much faster. And so if I'm supposed to train somebody But I can't even get, like, COVID has shown us that how many teachers can't even figure out how to mute the mic or turn off the camera, so you get to see a whole lot of things you didn't want to see. How many parents also are struggling with that? I mean, as a teacher, I've seen more of my parents than I want to see, and I mean like more, right? So there are lots of things that you're asking people to change, and change is hard. Change is very hard for a lot of us to do. We do kind of like systems that we especially if you were successful in the system. You're like, but it's a good system, quite work for me. Okay, right? So that is, change is very difficult. Culturally, the other thing I would say to you is, while Finland and those countries are great because they are doing fantastic things, because they are first world countries, they deal with different issues than we do. But you can also look at Singapore is one of my favorite countries right now because of where they started and what they did and where they are now. And so the conversation is great, and the ideas are not going to come from the people currently entrenched in the system. It has to come from you, because you are the ones who are going to make the change. And even when you make it, the children that come after you will be like, yeah, but that's still too slow because we want to do this, right? Because the world is changing so quickly, but it has to start somewhere. So this is a great conversation, and I will stop talking and let you guys continue.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your input and your questions. I wanted to just turn to the chat. There were a couple of comments before we move on. So I see, I think Henry, so I'm guessing it's Pastor Henry, or no, Bevon and Trevor. I want to say that. They said that different fields have different requirements. I have found that the arts and humanities are more open to critical thinking, as a formula is not as mandatory to learning. Agreed. And what are your thoughts on the parental role in the educational system? I like that. We'll discuss that. And before we go into that, I'll just read the next comment. Do you think that the responsibility and structure of the school system falls solely on the maker of such systems? And can you as students do anything about it? What are your suggestions? Oh, okay, so we got some loaded questions there. So I guess we should probably start off with the parental role. Do we want to go around in the panel? How has your parents like helped you? And what do you think would have been greater support from them and things like that?
I guess I could go on this. I believe that the parental role in the education system is extremely important, especially with this one here starting from a young age. And the way that it's set up here, if a student comes into a class and they are restless or whatever it might be, the teacher automatically puts them out. And something that can stem from is being at home. Maybe they were not taught to do certain things at home. So they might come into a class and might come off as rude to a teacher, but to them, that's just how they are at home, and that might disrupt the class. But one thing about the importance of the parental role is that they might not contribute as much as they think to the children's lives, because the children would wake up in the morning, depending on if they're primary or secondary school, do what they have to get ready, go to school, and then in the evening, if they have anything, lessons or whatever it might be, they go to that and then they come and see their parents. So their parents could only instill in them, especially during these schooling terms, they see them in the morning and in the evening, and even if that much, because then the children are studying or whatever it may be. So as important as it is, they don't really get that much time with them. So it is very important, but at the same time, they will need to push their children a lot more and try to learn about them and help them. Because if a parent just sits on the sidelines and assumes that everything is going well with their children, it may not be so. Because even with me, one thing, my mother, she checks on me and she tries to push me, and sometimes I might not show certain things to her, and then she will come and get a call or something, and then she will be on me and the work will get done. And I believe, and that's another thing that I wanted to go back to a structured school, because me personally, I want that structure. And with the whole COVID situation of being at home, it's not really there. So I believe the parents, especially depending on the child, parents are very crucial in the educational system.
Yes, I agree. I think for me, reading that question and hearing Renee say it, the first thing that came to mind was the relationship a parent has with their child. Because if if I'm close with my parents or whatever, it's somebody I can go to, somebody I can depend on. If I'm struggling in a subject, I can easily ask them, or if you just have your parents there to guide you and help you make sure you stay on that ball. But for somebody else who, might not have their parents there present or caring about their schoolwork, everybody has those subjects, that they just don't like to do. So if I don't have anybody on me making sure, did you get this done? Do you have all your homework caught up or whatever? I'm going to have that subject and just push it to the side. So the relationship a parent has with their child plays a major role in the education system.
I agree. I believe that the role of a parent in the education system has a big part to play. Is very important in keeping your child on the right path, ensuring that they get in the education that they need, and if not, providing things like lessons and tutoring, checking their reports to see where they need help and assisting them in those areas. Moral support goes a long way. And I'm sure if you do a statistics, a survey, to see the parents that are actually there with their children versus the ones that don't have the parents there, you would see that the ones who actually have parents, they are most likely to succeed because they have that support, and in representing their children in the PTA meetings in school and those type of things, wherever they think that the school needs to improve. I think that that is very important as well. I remember when I was going to school, there are a lot of things that my school wasn't doing, and my father, he saw it fit to make sure that I was able to, have the opportunity and a greater chance of succeeding. So I believe that the parents really have a very important part to play in the education system.
Jerome, would you like to comment?
Okay. I totally agree with Dominic. When it comes to school etiquette, everything starts at home. But what if parents who, was educationally well when they were younger, they tend to make sure that the children, the education that they did not had when they were younger, they tend to make sure that the children, have it by, pushing on, making sure, what, well, I'm not smart in some areas, but I know you have a good education system. So I have to make sure that, you're the future. So I personally believe, a parent plays a massive role in the education system, especially when they are not educated themselves.
I similar sentiments, but what I would say is, of like Jerome said, parents might not be educated, so maybe having an educational psychologist or administration being there to pick up certain things would benefit that student. So maybe Renee could talk about the benefits of having that person there to liaise with the student and the teacher and the parents, and how that educational psychologist could benefit them.
It's a good question. I'm gonna just put a slight input on the previous question and then answer that. And then we have questions in the chat. So yeah, I would say definitely parents are essential for education, and in different ways. Firstly, like once children like pretty much have that support and safety at home, it's easy for them to come to school and open and be ready to learn. And once safety is such an important thing about, especially at a young age, learning that your world is safe and that your parents can protect you allows a child to pretty much be open to what education there is out there. I knew for myself, in my experience, my mom, she would read to me when I was younger, and as I was growing up, she would read she's really good at like writing, so she used to read my essays and stuff, and that was really helpful for me to just be like, hey, my mother is very invested in what I do. And then on the flip side, my dad was always very encouraging of like balancing. So growing up, I was a big perfectionist when it came to studies. And if I did something wrong, like the weekend was ruined, like honestly. And my dad would always counsel me, telling me, what you do is not who you are. That's not your identity. If you wrote an exam, if it's not that good, that's fine there, because who you are is in Christ. And I think that even that part of it, like his counseling was even more helpful for me in the sense where I knew if I messed up, if I didn't do well in a specific subject, my parents were still proud of me. They were still encouraging and they still love me. And so I didn't have to prove my worth through, my studies. And I think that's something that parents, even if they, don't have the background in those specific subjects, they can help their child by knowing, hey, yeah, I love you. And I love when you do great things, but I love you regardless. And I think that's a very important part that parents can play. And in terms of the child psychologist, so we had a bit of a discussion beforehand of like, what are the tangible, practical things that we can do to ensure that children don't fall through the cracks? Because we know like sometimes children reach all the way up to graduation and can't read and or they just stop coming to school and no one picks up on them. So we were brainstorming of like what can be implemented or who can be employed to really be the eyes and ears of what's going on with specific students. And we were talking about a child psychologist, a person who can recognize, I know Raynell said earlier about developmental disabilities or just like learning disabilities that children may have. That person would be able to connect with that student one-on-one and help them through that. And they can also be the one counseling and incorporating the assistance of the parents. So if it is that, the child is falling behind, teaching and connecting with the parent to see, okay, what can be done on the weekends, or how can we motivate this child, or what different avenues or programs we need to turn to ensure that this child has the right support. And also just navigating, as we're talking about, what subjects do you like, what kind of passions do you have, what do you want to explore, what do you see as your strengths, someone who they can kind of talk to, kind of flesh things out with. And we know at times in the classroom setting, it's not really open for that. It's not really the right setting for that either, where children can really voice their concerns and have someone who is actually trained to recognize those things. And it can go even further, things like emotional things, like, we talked about bullying before. We know that this is still an issue throughout the education system. That person would also be in a great position to provide assistance to, work out conflict resolution skills, find out like, okay, this seems to be an issue. How can we, address this moving forward? And so we talked about that. I would add though, that if you have one of those in a school, it's going to be very hard to, one person who does this is going to be it won't be as helpful, because as we say, we really want to have someone who is focused and very in tune with what is going on with these specific students at an individual level. And so, yes, we want to have a child psychologist, but we want to have multiple. And that also screams funding, which, as we talked before, like that's one of the great impediments to, changing the system, because we know when things need to change, we need the money to fund that. And I think that's all I wanted to say about that. I feel like we all, other people on the panel, had some discussion about that as well.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the parenting aspect of it. Because we were saying how effective and impactful parents are in the bringing up of a child in their studies. But then we also have to look at the fact that parents go through a lot themselves, and they would have to, if they don't already have the knowledge, go and learn how to deal with the children. And I don't mean in a certain subject, but learn how to be compassionate with their child, learn how to be open with them. And as Renee said, safety is something very important. But in this day and age, telling your child that is safe out there, it might not be necessarily so true, because it really is not that safe. So although you might want to give them the safeness, you also have to let them know of the dangers in the world out there. And I guess this is one thing that is really hard, and there's nothing set in stone that this, and this, and that is different for everyone. And so, as crucial as it is for parents to be in the child's life and bring them up, it's also very taxing on them. And I believe that some children neglect it. And as much as we need the counseling for the students, they might also need it for the parents as well.
Yeah, so Dominic touching on that, you also have to, I remember we had a panel discussion and Chelsea was like, it takes a village to raise a child. So then it's like, what do you do for those students who don't have parents? Like I have a friend who both his parents died at a young age. So there also have to be other people. It doesn't necessarily have to be a parent, but people with who they can look at and to basically fill those roles, that they can go to, or people that are able to check on them and stuff like that, because not everybody's going to have the stereotypical mother and father they can go to, or at least one parent that they can always turn to for these types of situations.
I agree with what Kayla said. When I was the school I was going to, we had a guidance counselor, but I don't think they were really doing their job. You're just seeing them coming in and out of the school, and they're getting paid for this, and you're not really hearing any good feedback of the job that they are doing. So the guidance counselor has a very big part to play in this. As Kayla said, if the parent, mother, and father figures on there, I believe that the guidance counselor should step in and kind of take over in that aspect of it to ensure that the child stays on the right path and still has a good opportunity of succeeding.
I think the educational psychologist that I mentioned should be the guidance counselor, but they should also be there to really help the students that they know are at disadvantage, like that don't have parents or that don't have a stable household. Yes, we would want them to service everyone, but the ones that usually fall through the system and fall through the cracks are the ones that don't have the stable household. So yes, they can help out the ones that are good too, but focusing on the students that are not at, are at a disadvantage. So, did we have any more questions?
Yeah, there's another one in the chat.
Yeah, we have questions in the chat. So there was one from Reno and Celia that said, do you think that the responsibility and structure of the school system falls solely on the makeup of such systems? And can you as students do anything about it? What are your suggestions? So they want to say, what is our responsibility, or what role can we play in improving the education system, or our experience in that system?
Okay, I think that the students should have a say, and like if they see anything going wrong in their school, as they should have form a student body and like have representatives to represent to administrative, based on what they discuss among themselves, wherever they see areas that need to be improved, come together as peers, and try to solve those problems along and with the help of administrative as well. I believe that students should have a say because they are being affected by it if it just remains that way. So, I mean, having a voice and opening up towards those issues could really help you, could really help the students.
Hey,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Kayla.
I agree with what Raynell said. Like when Auntie Shaka asked her question, she said, in order to change the education system, it has to start with, us and the students themselves. And with having the same student body and stuff like that, you also have to have, a good relationship with at least one or two of the teachers, because as students, you can create the same student body and complain and discuss, all the problems, and you might take it to one teacher or one person who like the secretary or something, and they might put it aside or thing. But if you have those teachers that you actually have strong relationships with, you can, it could be a teacher of any subject, you just say, well, sir, so and so and so, we decided as a few of us, we were saying X, Y, and Z is wrong. And we wanted to know, what you can do or what you suggest we do and stuff like that. So it does not, I think it doesn't only have to do with the makers, but it can't only be the students too. It has to be both of them working together.
Definitely, I believe it has to be them working together because as a maker, they are not in it. They are teaching us, they are the heads. They do not know the struggles that we are going through. They might see it, they might see us and be like, oh, okay, they're not doing this because, and they don't know the actual reasons for certain things. So as Kayla said, the students do have to communicate with the teachers and you have to find the right people because you can't come as a body and just go straight to the principal. The principal or the head of any community, she has more important tasks to deal with. She has stuff to deal with during the day. So what I believe is not only going and ask them if the teachers, if this and what we should do, but coming together by yourselves, getting solutions for the problems, and then taking those solutions and then finding out if that could work. Because if we are just going to them, they're still allowing them to make these decisions. Yes, they will have the final say, but at least we could give an input and then they could see this, what we have gave and be like, oh, well, okay, guess we could try this. And if not, they could give us the reason why it's not working. Then we could go back and find out why it could and what we could do to better it. So I believe it is, if not at least a 50-50, not fully 100% the makers.
Jerome?
Okay, well, I personally believe you all have a voice, and that's where, I'm pretty sure, schools have implemented, student bodies, where the students can come to the student bodies and then, go back to the heads of the school, and the heads of the school will go back to the government. Because, the government, is I would have to say the sole persons who, make sure that, the schools are being run properly. So, we all have a voice, and our voices are important.
And Chelsea.
I would say I agree. I know at UWI we have a guild, and I know in secondary school we have a head girl and prefect. But truthfully, I don't know the point in a head girl and a prefect other than looking after the young ones. I mean, before class start, there really is no point. So that should be the body that we have, to speak to and tell them how we feel and what we're going through. But I am an incoming member of our guild at UWI right now. And I had a few meetings so far, and I realized the things that they speak of, shouldn't always be shared because it's like an ongoing conversation. So when do you share certain information? When do you share certain decisions? Because every time you go back and tell the students, it's going to be like, but y'all said this week, but how come it changed this week? It's because it's a process, and we as students don't know everything that goes behind, but there should be a body, like everybody else has said, there to represent us. Problem comes when the body or the people that go about to be a part of this body aren't really interested in student representation. It's more to go on your resume or to look a certain way and not really to help us as a people. And I see someone asked a question for me directly, attending UWI and coming from another country, would you say the education is what you expected? And I would say no, because I was a minority and I came from Barbados. And though we did the same CXC and everything, like my first year in UWI, I had a lecture and she was like, I didn't get, it was a simple little math thing. And the way they did it in Trinidad wasn't the way we did it in Barbados. She went up to the board and she was like, when y'all were in primary school, weren't you learning like this and that? And I stood up and everybody was watching me and I was like, I'm not from here. So the way we're taught and the way people interact with us is completely different. And it all goes back to the culture and just learning, and is just a broad spectrum. But to really directly answer the question, it was not what I expected. It was an extreme jump in terms of work, but being alone. And also, the system we have doesn't prepare us for university. If you did CAPE, you're still at a structured institution and they still baby you, especially if you went to that school already. Teachers know you and they look out for you still. I went to BCC college, so I didn't have that, but it still didn't prepare me for what I entered UE and what was really there for me. So even to my level, the system still, though I've been through and I'm going through it, it still isn't how we think it should be, for lack of a better word.
So Chelsea, I have a question for you then. What would you suggest is, implemented, even if nothing big is done, to basically fill that space between K and so lower sixth and upper sixth form and university level? And I guess Renee can answer on this one too if she agrees with Chelsea's comment.
Um, I think having somebody that has been through the system, that has experienced it, to allow you to understand what it's going to be like. Because truthfully, the students I've met at Cape have been excellent with maths, but in my degree, they fell down in other areas. And they came in thinking, okay, I have Cape, so I'm this and that. But they had to, humble themselves and realize that this is a completely different ball game. And these lectures, you can't look for somebody to come in and start writing on the board, or you can't look for somebody to make sure you are okay. You have to realize this is you. This is they don't. Some of them don't care. Some of them do, but it's hard to tell somebody how to grow up, like they would say.
Yeah, because hearing you make that comment was kind of surprising because for me, I'm in lower six now, so a lot of the comments I hear and stuff is, K prepares you for university and you're getting things. So to hear you as a student who made that transition say, yes, it does help you to a certain extent, but really and truly, they're still not preparing you to think. And then for my teachers to tell me, CAPE is helping you, when you get to university, this is
Well,
basically a tertiary level.
I think it all depends the degree as well. Because like I said, my friends are really good with mathematics,
Mhm.
but they fell down in things that they didn't do before because some of it is very repetitive. So it really depends the field that you go into.
Then
Renee?
also, wait, before Renee goes, they're also seeing from some of the heads, they tell us that it's totally different because here in Lower Six school, they know the teachers will know our names in the classroom. They'll come in the morning, they will take registration, and then when you get to university, you're just a number. Right, no one really cares about you. Is that's just what it is. You come in, don't go to any of your schools. At the end of the day, absent, fail. That's it. So,
Yeah.
Kate and then going to university is completely different. So I guess it does set a little bit with the work aspect, but the whole environment is something that is very not the same. And then Dr. Grace in the chat, she said that the policymakers are not usually teachers. The teachers are bound by the system as well in many ways. And this is true. And we have seen it even with the whole COVID situation that is going on currently. A lot of teachers don't know exactly when it is they have to go back into school until the next week or so. And we are asking them what is going on, and they don't know until this. So I guess it is that we have to go to the higher people. And something that I heard from listening to the radio today is that they are doing a survey for the youth, the 35 and under here in Barbados. And one thing that they are doing is it will be online, but then also for the people that can't get online, they'll be going into the communities. So I guess this is one way that we could also put out our information, because this is a way that they saw it to give us a voice. And to the question I asked what we could do, this is something we're doing here now, coming together, discussing it, and then taking it back to the schools and getting more people to join and rally with us so that we could take it higher and actually make an impact.
Before Renee goes, I saw Dr. Sutherland said in the chat, not all universities. And I do agree, because for me in my first year, it was complete chaos. But when I realized, like, got into my third year and realized a lot of lecturers do know me, they do know my name, and some of them do care. So it is not is experience, is the person as well, because some people go to university and just float through and don't really care. But when some lecturers see that you're genuinely interested, they really are willing to work with you. But it also depends on you, the person, because you can't expect somebody to help you if you're not willing to help yourself.
Yeah, that was kind of the same vein I was going to bring in, because we talked a lot about how, we can rally as students to effect change. But I also took the question as, how can you advocate for yourself within the education system as well? So yeah, we know it's structured. We know sometimes children fall through the crack, but what can you do as that individual to kind of navigate that and ensure that you get the best out of it? And it's something definitely you have to do in university, but I would encourage people to do it in elementary, well, primary and secondary school as well. And that is to have a close connection with your teachers and ask them what you could do better, and ask them, okay, you said that I got this wrong, but this was my mindset when I was doing it. Where did I go wrong? Do things where you are engaging them, because sometimes they think the student doesn't care, but sometimes you could just feel discouraged. But if you go to them and really ask them, okay, yeah, this is what I was thinking when I wrote this essay. This is what I was thinking when I, answered this problem. I'm getting mixed up with the Spanish words and all of these things. Advocate for yourself, connect with your teachers, ask them about people that they know. You're interested in a language, ask them, what types of careers can I get if I do Spanish? I like Spanish. Things like that, where you can take your destiny and your pathway into your own hands. And we're not saying that it's the onus is on you alone. We're just saying it gives you some freedom when you engage and you connect on that level. And in university, you really have to, because a lot of, it's not only because it's about numbers, it's kind of just like, it's so many people that you need to be intentional about making those connections, because those are the types of people who would write your letters of recommendation, or they may hear from one of their old colleagues about a job and be like, hey, I know this student, she's always talking to me. I think she's really passionate about this. I think she might be a great fit. So yes, the education system is kind of stuck in its ways, but you as the individual can also take on a little bit of that responsibility, even though I must admit, technically it's supposed to be on them to really guide you through that process. But if as we're in a fallen world, we also need to figure out how we can best navigate that. And I see that we have a hand up. So I just want to flag for Jerome. I said we have a hand up. So I'm going to go to that question. But first, Jerome, I'm going to come back to you about how, in terms of just navigating and being your own advocate through the process of going through agriculture and still having that landscaping passion. What are you doing? How is that experience has been for you? I'm going to ask you about that, but I'm just going to take the question in the chat first. I'm not sure
it's me again. It's me again. Don't worry.
Oh, you changed the name.
I changed the name because it was bugging me. So there's a few points. Firstly, the transition from any institution to another one will always be difficult. From nursery to primary is difficult, right? When you're just playing and then suddenly you got to be writing your name every day, that's difficult. From primary to secondary, when you're getting ready for common entrance, so your teachers, working with you, and then now you got 13 different subjects and different teachers, and some know your name and some can't get your name pronounced, right? Which is why I don't care if you get my name pronounced right or not, right? There's always going to be a difficulty in the transition. So when Kayla says she's surprised that CAPE doesn't really prepare you, it's because it is a transition. So yes, you know some stuff and you're ready to do a particular exam, but does not mean you're ready to apply it in any serious way yet. It doesn't mean that you are ready to be in a class of 100 people as opposed to 20 people, right? A-level classes don't tend to be very big, but university classes, especially first year, you got, depending on what university you go to, up to 300 people in a room with you. I've taught in rooms with 500 people. You can't see the people in the back. There's just dots for you, right? You just talk and you hope that the dots at the back can hear you, and they can't. They're playing their games on the computer. They can't hear you, right? And so this is always going to be a difficult transition. That's the first thing. Secondly, the culture of school and university, absolutely different, right? At university, many of your lecturers aren't paid to teach you. That's not what they're paid for. They're paid to do research in a particular field that they're very good at. They may not be very good at teaching. Now, some may really care about teaching. They may really be good at teaching. They may be trying to hone their craft. But for many of them, you are an annoyance. Like they want to be researching what they research, what they love. They want to be in their room, doing their thing, talking to people that know what's going on. And there you are asking, what's the formula for the quadratic equation? Like, what? Like, you should know that. Why are you here if you don't even know that, right? So you have to kind of fend for yourself, and you really are an adult now in the system. Like, you really are no longer, you're 18 usually, or 16 at least. You're not usually 13, 14. You're an adult in a system that expects you to act like an adult. And for many of us, up until 18, we weren't adults. Our parents are still kind of packing our lunches and telling us, hey, you forget your tie. You know, you left your project home. I said, mommy, and your mommy come down. I know there's no mommy. And if you left school, if you left the country, worse, because you're trying to figure out rent and food and partying, and then also lecture at 8 o'clock in the morning. I've been to 4 different universities. I know everything. So there's a different culture, right? And so there is an adjustment. And most people who transition from school to anything else, work, university, whatever it may be, there is going to be that culture shock where you're like, for the first how many weeks, I don't like this. School days was the best days. I want to go back to that thing. I used to cuss all the time. Like I because it's unfamiliar and it's difficult. So that's very normal. So mentoring can help. Like, Kayla, what really is useful, I think, is people who have gone through that first year to go back to their schools and say, hey man, here are some things that you should try doing from now. Here are some things, like, don't wait for your parents to get behind. You need to get behind your own self. You need to be able to discipline yourself. Like, do like me when I was at Harrison College in sixth form. My friends be like, let me go town. I'd be like, my mother ain't gonna let me do it. I ain't even ask my mother. I ain't going because I got other things to do. I can't do it. So by the time I got to university, I could tell my friends, no, I'm not coming. I got other things to do, because it's something you have to develop yourself as you transition to adulthood. The other thing I wanted to say is growth always happens outside of the comfort zone. So it kind of has to be uncomfortable for you to grow up a little bit. If it's too easy, you continue to be a little kid, right? And you have to kind of grow up into who you are going to be. And university, work, whatever it is that you step into next will require you to be a little uncomfortable, so you will grow a little bit. And the same thing will happen when you enter a job, when you change jobs. Like, if you go back to school, every single time it's uncomfortable. Every single time you have to grow a little bit to fit into the new space. But absolutely, you can advocate for yourself. Absolutely, you should be saying to yourself, hey, this subject that I'm doing at school ain't really rocking my world. I don't really like it. Where can I do it someplace else? Like, if you don't fight for yourself, who will, right? Like, don't expect the system to fight for you. If you can't be bothered to get up out of bed, you got to get up and say, no, I want to do this. I want to figure out how to make money. School has taught me, I don't like any of those subjects. What else is there? Like, you need to kind of decide in your mind from now, what is it I really want to be? What does it really want to do? How do I want to change the world? And maybe it won't happen at 18. Maybe at 40, you will go, oh, this is what I want to do. And that's okay, because there's no real timeline. The idea that life starts at 18, you have to get it organized, is a lie, right? Okay, I'm done again.
I just want to say that I love the contribution. Maybe if I heard these things before I started university, I would have been a little bit more, I would have realized, oh, this is normal, So like you said, we need to have people, mentors, to come back into the school. And I would love to do things like that. Just to share experience, prepare people, because why should we, want to make a system better? It starts with us, So yeah, I think Renee had a question for Jerome.
Yeah. So Jerome, I just wanted you to just share your experiences. I know your pathway was a little bit unorthodox, and you went this way and that way. So I just wanted you to share that with everyone.
Okay. Well, earlier I had mentioned that, you wanted to pursue the career of being a landscaper. And, the school that I had went to or attending right now, they were not offering it that year. So they offered me agriculture, I took it, I fell in love with it. But during the process of school and stuff, I realized that some of the principles that I'm learning in the agriculture field also can be applied to the landscaping field. So what I did, because I didn't really want to go back to school the next year to learn landscaping, I decided to take a leap of faith and to start a lawn maintenance business where I can learn from scratch and make mistakes all the way up to where I can be comfortable to call myself a professional. But if I actually wanted to, I would go back to school and learn like the stuff that I actually need to know to actually accomplish the landscaping goal and stuff. So, but it was not easy because you know it's a lot of hard work. And me personally, I fell in love with the landscaping because I like the whole result of it and the way how the satisfaction of how the end product is. So, any more questions to add to that? Or y'all good?
Don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I would say, as you mentioned, like even though you didn't go into the formal education of landscaping, you're still allowing yourself to go through and navigate that process by having that as a business on the side. And I think that's something we should also like be mindful of. Yes, education is great, and yes, it has its place, but that's not the only avenue for learning, and it's not the only avenue for developing and cultivating those skills. There's a lot of different ways, and that's also why we should have the freedom to explore and look at different things, so that even if in the textbook sense of it, you can't really follow that path, you can still find ways and advocate for yourself, as you definitely did advocate for yourself, where you said, I'm not going to waste this year, I'm going to learn through agriculture and see where those lessons learned can translate into landscaping. And then you realize, hey, you like agriculture as well. So, and that's something we just need to be fluid a lot of times and flexible. And even if the system doesn't allow us to be, I just want to encourage everyone to have that mindset of being flexible and open. I think we're running down on time, so I guess we can all go around and give our final thoughts. Who wants to start?
Yes, I'll start. I'll just touch on one of the things that were just recently said about when Jerome said that it was hard work and him making mistakes. And then as Shaka said, Auntie Shaka, that you need to be in an uncomfortable position to grow. And it's just something that us as humans, we think that once we start something, that's it. The result is there. We have completed. When truly it's a lot of work you put in, and sometimes all that work you put in might not amount to anything. But that's how you see it. But at the end of the day, you have put in that work, and it might transfer it to something else, even if you don't get that goal or reach whatever it is that you wanted to reach. So I'm grateful for everything that we have just talked about, and it's giving me a different outlook because I am one that I don't really push that hard um academically. But there's, as you all said, if that's not what it is, you need to go and you need to push for whatever else that is that you are looking to do. So you can't just sit back and lay back and be like, okay, everything will happen. And that's something that I guess the structure of school sets up a little bit. As Renee says, it takes away the creativity of children. Because when you look at some children, you will see them having whole conversations with themselves and their imaginary friends. And we will look at them and be like, oh, and if all grown people are doing that now, oh, you're crazy, you need to go to the mental or whatever it might be. But all that is taken out of them and they go into this structure. So I believe the creativity and not really taken away, but allowing them to use it and apply it to certain things is a way that we could also further the education. And also that we need to start looking for the teachers, but us, as Jerome did, that we could actually advocate for ourselves and do the work, not necessarily the school work, but what we need to do to better our lives, and then eventually make it better for our children and our children's children.
Kayla.
I think my final comments would just be, this is I think this is our second panel discussion on the education system, and this is not the end. This is something that needs to be constantly talked about and bring awareness, to like other people, to the same teachers, same students in the same education system. And yeah, just to educate people more on topics like this, because even I, as someone on the panel, did get some advice from someone like Auntie Shiaka, who's been through the same system that we're going through currently. And not only are we educating others or giving others more information about it, but we also ourselves are learning as we go through these same steps to become the successful adults we all want to be.
Yeah, my final comments would be, well, as Kayla said, this is our second panel discussion on the education system, and I have learned a lot so far. And the main thing that stood out for me is that the education system is based on theory, and I believe that more practical needs to be involved, not just in labs, biology, and, opening frog and those type of things, not just that, even in maths, I think there are different ways you can involve more practical learning, and yeah, so I think that's my take on the education system. And yeah.
Jerome.
Okay, well, my final thoughts or conclusion is that, the education system is one thing, but, I believe that self-development of the mind and to really understand that, the education system only teaches us to do certain things, but the reality of life is, sometimes the things we learn in secondary school or high school, or whatever the case may be, doesn't always come to play in the real world of work. So yeah, that's it,
All right, I will give my sentiment and I will allow Rennie to give hers and hand over to Pastor Henry. Firstly, it's always a pleasure to have, Dominic, Renal, and Kayla. But I love the contributions of Jerome and Rennie. It was a pleasure having you guys here. I hope that you guys are here the next time because this conversation was just amazing. And Dr. Drake's contribution was greatly appreciated, even me advising me, because to know that what I've been through is very normal. It's all about growth. And like I said, we have to make the change. And change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with us. So the system is flawed, but I think we discussed a few things to at least start the ball moving and encourage others on how we think it should go. Thank you, Renee.
Thanks. I'm gonna just fold in this very last question into my final thoughts so that we complete all of them. I saw Pastor Henry said that you mentioned that many students fall through the cracks. Do you think that it's a bigger waste of taxpayers' money to continue with the current system, especially when you have to import nurses and other professionals from abroad at the end of the day? Yeah, I completely agree with his train of thought. The thing about the education system is that it's multifaceted and it requires a lot of players at different levels, and the level of the government is to do some of that far-reaching planning of what are the needs of the country, and how can we use funding and tax revenue in order to ensure that we equip our members and our citizens with the skills we need for the future. And that does require planning, and that does require a lot of forecasting, predicting what would be needed, and sometimes it's an existing problem, but it also just takes a lot of decision making, and that does require someone to be like, okay, as Pastor Amy said, we need nurses. How can we encourage students to go through nursing? Well, we can have drives and programs at schools where they can say, okay, yeah, a lot of people are thinking about being doctors, but this is also a pathway where you can also, interact with a patient and help with the care of a patient. And also you can provide financial incentives. Instead of paying for someone outside to come in, you can use that same revenue to grow the skills of the people within your country. And a lot of times it's an easy fix just to call up and be like, hey, I know a lot of times doctors come from Cuba. You all have already trained people. Can you just bring up a couple people? And that's what it is. Like, a lot of times we spend so much time looking for the easy fix and not a lot of time looking at the long-term ramifications of those quick fixes. I think the last thing I would say is, I would say definitely if someone showed me where I can use the passions that I've had in Trinidad, I would have stayed, because the passions that I've developed really was because I saw a lot of poor healthcare, and in terms of like safety, a lot of things were happening. Children were getting burned with hot water bottles in the NICU and all of these things, and that kind of developed a passion in me. It's the kind of work that I do right now, but it was bred in Trinidad. And that's what I'm talking about. If at that decision-making level, where they can see these are the types of things we need people who work with reducing hospital-acquired conditions. If that time is spent, then we can advance. We can, we're looking at these other countries and we're saying they're developed or whatever, but we have the skills and we have the innate ability to get there, but it does take forward thinking and it does take a lot of planning. And so I would say to next time, because this conversation can definitely go on forever, but I will pass it on to Pastor Henry.
Thank you very much, Renee. Chelsea, you had your final thought? Okay. All right, let me call Dr. Sutherland. She has been the one behind the program for the youth, so can close without asking her to say something to her young people and to say something to us. Dr. Sutherland?
Hi, good night, everybody. I just want to say how proud I am listening to these young people. How well Renee and Jerome, y'all have just come in and fit the mold. And I just want to respond to some of the things you guys have highlighted, just to show how important the student voice is. So I lecture part-time at the University of the West Indies at the Cave Hill campus. And Professor Barrett, so, one of her major suggestions, one of her major projects at the university was making it a smart campus, making sure students could use the technology, making sure the university was up to the times from a technological advance. I don't know how many of you paid attention to Professor Sir Hilary Beckles' conversation about the next 20 years at the University of the West Indies and the kind of model we need to take on to meet the needs and wants of our community. The university's vision has always been to give back to the community that has nurtured us. And I am a product of that university. So like you, Renee, my passion has always been for drama and theater arts, law, psychology, and anything performance-wise and sport. And I had the opportunity at Cave Hill to travel the world to represent the university in sports. And I felt like as much as I wanted to go overseas, this university has nurtured me, and I had the opportunity to pour back into my community. And that's the reason why I'm there. So I get to travel overseas, but home drums beat first, as we say. And so I'm listening to y'all and I'm hearing that you want to go out, but you want to go out and get the information and bring it home. And that is so satisfying from a lecturer's perspective, from a parent perspective, from a bystander's perspective, because that's what we need people to do. We need to build our Caribbean community because we are no less than the USAs or the Finlands or the Chinas out there. We just need to keep our talented people so that there's not a brain drain. And I just want to comment y'all on your individual and independent thought as young people, from Kayla and Dominic talking about sports administration, something that is not always, privileged in society. Not everybody wants to be a sports administrator, but sport is an $800 billion industry. We have someone who wants to be an orator on my lap right now because she's fighting me. Renee in health policy, Chelsea in engineering. Jerome, I just want to appreciate the fact that, we had a call from a teacher saying these are products of the system and they're successful products. And you have come in to share your experience wanting to do landscaping in a system that's all about math and science and biology, and then finding your niche in agriculture and sharing that with us. Raynell, the student entrepreneur among us all. So I'm going on and on, but I'm just so proud of you all. I see CARICOM here from the different countries represented. I don't see the insularity that the politicians talk about. And I just see some proud Caribbean representation, and I see our future, and I think it's in good hands. And so the only thing I would encourage you guys to do is invite more of your friends to the panel discussions. Let's hear what the youth have to say. Use your voice, use your agency, and advocate for the kind of country or the kind of community you want to live in. I am completely proud and blown away. I feel like all of y'all are my kids, and I am just happy to listen to y'all every month and hear y'all bring all these ideas. And I'm going to be quiet now because the next 10 years we'll have a new panelist bringing her own viewpoint. So over to you, Pastor Henry. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us and for supporting our young people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sutherland. And you guys, if Dr. Sutherland's called, if she called you kids, children, then I am happy to have so many grandchildren. You really did well, and the Lord bless you all. I really appreciate your efforts, your input tonight into the program. As a matter of fact, going through my head, it's another program for the adults on the education system. So I'm trying to get probably a parent, a teacher, an administrator to talk to us on the Real Talk, the big program that we usually have on other Tuesday night, not the youth program, the one for everybody. So that is going to be sometime into the next quarter from July to September. Definitely should be able to impress the other administrators on the Real Talk Family Life team to get us there. One of the things that we have to talk about is the different systems around the world, and we don't see a lot of it here in the Caribbean. I was privileged to live in Grenada under the Maurice Bishop regime. And when the Cubans came to Grenada, one of the things that they brought with them was the system of adult education. And so they pushed us back. Every Grenadian, adult Grenadian was expected to go back to school. Depends on where you finish school. So that if you finish in primary, you go to secondary level. If you were left school at secondary, they expect you to pursue tertiary level in some field or the other, not just into, the subjects the structured subjects. They had different things that you can explore. And I guess some of you understand, some of you have had some experience with the Cuban system already. Next week, God's willing, invite all the parents, invite all the young people, invite all the adults. We have a very important subject. Estate planning is the subject. Next week, Tuesday, we have two attorneys at law with us, and who are going to be with us, and we have a financial advisor. So yes, estate planning sounds like getting ready to die, but you're going to learn a lot more. That if you're going to have estate planning, you have to start from now. So plan to be with us next Tuesday, and thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next Tuesday on our next program. The Lord bless you. Do have a wonderful evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good
Pastor.
night.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you.
Glad I joined.